Iran, Sierra Leone and Liberia have both declared state of emergency to tackle the highly contagious and incurable disease, which has also stricken neighboring Guinea.
It's important to reach out to the communities and to engage them and to use all sorts of varieties of ways to do this. So, for example, in communities there are many opinion leaders. They may be religious leaders, they may be local leaders, but they are people who really shape the understanding and perspectives of communities, and it's important to reach out to them so that people really understand that this is not a mysterious disease and what are the proper steps that can be done to protect themselves and others.
The WHO has called for the mobilization of political, religious and local leaders in Sierra Leone, Liberia and Guinea to create a better welcome for medical professionals attempting to treat victims.
Countries should ensure that the burials and the funeral rites are conducted in accordance with health regulations to reduce the risk of infection. They should be done with professional teams which help them to make sure that those things are done safely, but they should also be done in a way which is culturally sensitive.
The organization is also consulting with local leaders to help suspend local customs, such as eating bushmeat or hugging and kissing Ebola victims at their funerals, which can transmit the disease.
Now, in other news, Egypt might have marked the one-year anniversary of the violent dispersal of the Rabaa al-Adawiya on Thursday, August the 14th, when hundreds of supporters of former President Mohamed Morsi were killed. But a Human Rights Watch report released earlier on says the crackdown by security forces that day killed 817 people and could amount to crimes against humanity.
In the 188-page document, based on a year-long investigation, the New York-based group urged the United Nations to look into 6 incidents involving killings by security forces of supporters of Morsi, who was overthrown by the army on July 3, 2013, following several days of protest. The HRW Executive Director, Kenneth Roth, said the crackdown against the Muslim Brotherhood had been brutal.
On August 14th, 2013, just a year ago, the Rabaa sit-in was broken up with extraordinary brutality. The police said that they would have a gradual dispersal, that they would allow safe exits. They talked about minimum force. In fact, within minutes of the early morning beginning of this police operation,
the report calls then Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who is now president, a principal architect of the violence, sitting at the top of the army's chain of command. The report also named Interior Minister Mohammed Ibrahim, saying his remark on television 2 weeks after the disposal shows that instead of using force as a last resort, officials had estimated losing 10% of the people. Based on interviews with 122 witnesses, including residents unsympathetic to the protesters, and a review of video footage, HRW concluded security forces left no safe exit for most of the 12 hours assault and at times fired on those seeking to escape. The HRW report called on the UN Human Rights Council to establish an international commission of inquiry to investigate the mass killings of demonstrators since June 30, 2013. An Interior Ministry statement about the event published on Saturday, August 9, said security forces only launched the crackdown after efforts to persuade protesters to leave peacefully failed. It said security forces issued a final warning to demonstrators before the assault and established safe exit for those who wanted to leave once police and soldiers moved in.
The Rabaa massacre was really one of the worst massacres of a demonstration in recent time, very much on a par with the massacres in Tiananmen Square in China in 1989, or the Andijan massacre in Uzbekistan in 2005. This is a crime against humanity in the view of Human Rights Watch, which mandates that the authors be brought to justice. Now, Egypt has done nothing to investigate in any public manner this crime. There has been complete impunity inside Egypt. And so Human Rights Watch is calling on the international community to act.
Once Egypt's best organized and most successful political movement, the Brotherhood has seen thousands of members detained and many sentenced to death since Morsi's overthrow. It says it is a peaceful group. Though the Brotherhood was initially singled out by government security forces, Egypt has since targeted secular activists prominent in the 2011 uprising that toppled Hosni Mubarak.
After the break on Network Africa, South Sudan misses the deadline to form a transitional government, and there are consequences. Please join us again.
If you want to know what's trending or you miss your favorite live shows, you can watch it all on our YouTube channel. Simply log on to www.youtube.com/channelsweb. Scroll down to your favorite program and click play. You can also view all uploaded videos by clicking on View All. Don't forget to subscribe and get the latest videos. If they are interesting, like them and be heard. Get connected with the channel's television YouTube page. The news at your fingertips.
Missing a deadline is one thing, but thinking that you will walk away freely is another. That's one lesson the South Sudan authorities would have to learn the hard way, especially since it's led to the deaths of several hundreds of people and the displacement of thousands.
Grant is leading a 15-member delegation to the troubled nation to push for peace after South Sudan's opposing parties failed to meet an August 10 deadline to form a transitional unity government, which was agreed as part of a ceasefire deal signed in January that has been violated by both sides. Grant said the UNSC was also speaking to other bodies, such as the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, a regional grouping, about possible punitive steps.
The Security Council expresses its readiness to consider, in consultations with relevant parties, including IGAD and the African Union, all appropriate measures, including targeted sanctions, against those who take action that undermines the peace, stability and security of South Sudan, including those who prevent the implementation of these agreements. That is a very clear statement by all 15 members of the Security Council that there will be consequences for those who try to undermine agreements that are reached in the Addis Ababa talks.
At least 10,000 people have been killed since fierce fighting erupted in South Sudan in December, pitting President Salva Kiir's government forces against supporters of Riek Machar, his former deputy and longtime political rival. The conflict has reopened deep ethnic tensions between Kiir's Dinka and Machar's Nuer in a country which won independence from Sudan in 2011. Kiir and Machar agreed in May to a ceasefire and to form a transitional government, but little progress has been made. Amid the conflict, aid agencies say South Sudan could be headed for the worst famine since the mid-1980s, when malnutrition swept through East Africa and killed over 1 million people. The onset of the rainy season restricts delivery of aid in the vast country of 12 million people because it has very few paved roads.
Now, despite the tension in South Sudan, many people are making a change, or at least doing their part to contribute to change. In this next report, a group of performers put on a show in a local market in Juba, and they have one message: promotes the education of girls.
Titled Education for the People, Grasp It. The play explores the difficulties girls face in the country, addressing issues like education, domestic violence and early marriage. Lack of education for girls is just one of the many issues facing Africa's youngest country. After months of ongoing conflict, South Sudan is on the brink of humanitarian catastrophe. A famine looms.
We went to the market, make a research, asking about what that they have in their community. Don't let the girl go to school and what. And we get all this research, and then we come and sit down. We're starting scripting our play.
The street theatre troupe is made up of actors from the South Sudan Theatre Group in collaboration with international NGO Free Press Unlimited, which works with disenfranchised communities to provide better access to news and information. The actors encourage the audience to participate and even have a discussion at the end of the show. They also keep things simple with few props and no lighting. They also use costumes which reflect the culture so as not to alienate the audience. The reaction so far has been positive.
Now they can benefit something because they know what is going on, because a lot of girls now they are affected themselves because of that, because they can just run off early marriage because they cannot get anything.
It's off to the next performance for the actors. They hope their engagement with local communities will have some impact and help improve the lives of women and young girls, reaching far beyond the audience watching the plays.
Now, just before we draw the curtains, the Nairobi Elephant Orphanage, home to over 20 orphan infant calves, celebrates World Elephant Day by bringing attention to the plight of Africa's elephants, threatened by surging rates of illegal poaching. Now, poaching has risen in recent years across sub-Saharan Africa, where well-armed criminal gangs have killed elephants for tusks and rhinos for horns, and that's often shipped to Asia for use in ornaments and medicines.
Africa's biggest animals continue to be poached in record numbers as the world marks the third annual World Elephant Day, which was created to raise awareness of a crisis facing elephants in Africa and Asia. The survival odds for the world's elephants beyond our lifetime are becoming increasingly grim. During the past 4 years, ivory poaching has increased to unprecedented levels. About 100 African elephants are slaughtered every day for the illegal wildlife trade. According to a June 2014 report by the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, 20% of Africa's elephants may be killed in the next 10 years if poaching continues unabated. Highlighting Africa's poaching menace is the David Shildick Elephant Orphanage at the outskirts of Nairobi. The orphanage is home to some 23 orphan calves whose family members were poached. The young elephants are hand-raised in the orphanage and later released back into the wild. Edwin Lusici, head keeper at the orphanage, says the number of orphans has been growing.
We all have to come together to help stop poaching. It is at a high rate. Currently in Africa, every 15 minutes, an elephant is gone. You can tell how long it will take before we lose everything. I believe in 10 years, maximum 15 years, there will be no more elephants if the current rate is going on. And so a lot needs to be done in terms of education. People need to know why these animals are important, why these animals need to be protected, and how these animals are important to us.
Conservationists worry that the relentless poaching of the animals, slaughtering them for their ivory tusks, could drive the species to extinction within a decade. It's estimated that less than 400,000 African elephants remain. In 2012, an estimated 35,000 elephants were killed for their tusks, which equates to about 96 per day, or 1 every 15 minutes. Poaching levels in Africa have exceeded over 5% of the total population, a tipping point as the killings are now exceeding the animal's natural growth rate. Kenyan officers seized 13.5 tons of ivory at the port city of Mombasa last year, mostly originating from other countries in the region. At least 249 suspects have so far been arrested this year and prosecuted for various wildlife offenses.
And that's where we draw the curtains on this episode of Network Africa. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. As always, I'd love to hear from you, so feel free to send me an SMS via the number on your screen. Until next time, stay blessed and proudly African. I'm Cynthia Are. Bye for now.
A time comes in the life of every race when people are driven by echoes of the past to chart a course for an exalted future. Africa is at this threshold, as major actors in the Africa arena plot a renaissance towards common destiny. Let's pedal across the streams of yesterday, from the backstreets of Africa to the defining roles of policymakers, the political realities of the African nation, balance of power, and the strive to sustain national interest and identity. Join us on Network Africa on Channels Television. Network Africa, the rallying point for the emergence of a new Africa.